Welcome. My name is Stripdagen. I've been all sorts of things, but amongst many, I've been a publisher of soul food comics, publishing graphic novels. I think that is what I'm most known for. Today we have Felipe Pan and Giovanna or Gio Guimaraes. There you go. And you have made the graphic novel, I don't know what the Portuguese name is, but it's Sirenen van Haarlem, the Sirenen van Haarlem. You're the first question, because the two of you, you're Brazilians. Yes. So the first question when I tell people I'm going to do an interview tomorrow or today, first question people ask is, why do two Brazilians make a comic book about a Dutch member of the resistance, Hannie Schaft, but really it's about the resistance, the whole group around Hannie Schaft. So why did you?
Yeah, basically it's sort of like a silly story of how we came across it. This was like 6 years ago, and I was doom scrolling, as you would sometimes. It's inevitable.
Yeah, good times for doom scrolling.
Yeah, but for this one was very productive actually, because as I was doom scrolling, I came across these headlines which read something like, "Do you know the story of the 3 young Dutch women who joined the resistance to fight during World War II?" And I remember reading, getting to the bottom of the article and thinking that story was just so fascinating and powerful. But just because it's on the internet, it doesn't mean it's true. So I had to double check it and triple check it. So I found many articles and interviews, some of them in Dutch. So I had to try and translate them, which led me to the movie, right, from the 70s. Right. And at that point, I said, well, this would make a fantastic graphic novel, right? So I had to double check if anybody had already, made a comic book based on that story, and luckily nobody had. So which led me to start to look for an illustrator for the project. And I made a point in having a woman who was an artist to join the project, because it's the story of 3 young Dutch women. So a female point of view was not only necessary, it was mandatory, right, for the project. And that's when I came across Giovanna's art style, which is very sort of like photographic and very reminiscent of the first half of the 20th century, which was just perfect. So I reached out to her. And do you want to?
So it was funny because we didn't know each other. So one day I received an email. "Oh, hello, my name is Felipe. I have this story. Do you want to make the art for me for a graphic novel?" And he sent me a very brief synopsis. But I was like, whoa, that story is incredible. Is this true? Is this real? And I found it so moving, so strong story. They are so brave. Of course, I want to be part of this. Of course, I want to do this. So that was the start.
Are you two comic book makers before you started this book? Yeah. You both are.
Yes, the book actually came out in Brazil by a publisher called Nemo. They had published 2 other comic books, right, that I had contributed to with another artist. And Giovanna, you also had.
Yeah, I worked for comics for a long time, doing comics for the United States, or coloring or making covers. And the last years I was working with independent comics by myself and some small publishers in São Paulo.
Yeah. Okay. Brazil had its own dictatorship, 64-85. Mm-hmm. I imagine they would have had some form of resistance, or there would have been some form of resistance in those years. So why not choose for a Brazilian resistance story?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot, and the reason is that so many artists already do this, right? So many famous, notorious, highly talented artists have tackled this subject time and time again, right? And not only in the comic book medium, but also in cinema. We got The Secret Agent, and we got I'm Still Here, 2 movies that, one of them actually won the Oscar, which already tackle with this situation, with this issue, right? So for us, we wanted to deviate a little. We wanted to produce something that was a little different. We wanted to offer a Brazilian perspective, our perspective, into a subject that was not Brazilian. So I think that was the intention, and we wanted to show this story to the Brazilian audience because, as far as we knew back then, virtually nobody in Brazil knew about the Dutch resistance, especially because when we Brazilians study World War II history, it tends to be, okay, so you have the Nazi, and they just occupied Belgium and the Netherlands. And then we get to focus a little more on the fights in France. So it's sort of like a side note, right? So we don't get a sense of what the Dutch resistance was actually like, nor the Belgian resistance. So we thought that it would be important to shed some light on it.
Yeah.
And from my part, I also like the story of female warriors. For example, in Brazil, I was researching about some, not even in Brazil, not very known female warriors we have, like, for example, the African queens you had during the slavery, trying to fight to freedom for the people. They are not very known in Brazil. So female warriors, female stories is something that drives me.
Precisely. So, and what was it exactly about the story of Hannie Schaft and Truus and Freddie Oversteegen? Oversteegen, yeah, I'm sorry. That attracted you to this particular story?
I think that, first of all, it was their age, right? How young they were. Giovanna was telling something really funny
I always
yesterday.
say my first thoughts when I was reading the synopsis was, whoa, what I was doing useful in my 14, 16, 18 years? Probably nothing, just listening music, looking at the boys, maybe reading some good books. These girls were in the streets with a small pistol in their bag, in the bike, and fighting the Nazis. This is so brave, I can't imagine.
Yeah, and I'm a teacher, right, also.
Right. Yeah.
And I do have students who are 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So for me, getting to know their story and looking at myself, as like Giovanna did, or looking at my students now, I couldn't fathom the idea that these students would be pushed into a situation that's so terrible that they would decide to take such drastic actions, necessary actions as well. So I think that was the main drive to explore these characters, right? Who were real people, of course.
Right. Luciana Falcon, who wrote the forwards in the Brazilian edition, said she was reading and she started to cry because it was her daughter was Hannie's age.
Right, yeah. So there's a direct connection for her at that point. You said it yourself, like the story is not very well known in Brazil, and you found some websites, you had to translate. So when you pick up a story like this, how do you go about? Because where do you get your sources from? Where do you get your material to base yourself on?
Yeah, for this story in particular, it started with the interviews and the articles, but then I got to read some nonfiction books about the subject, right? I reached out to the foundation, the Hannie Schaft Foundation, also, and so it was mainly a collective effort. We didn't get access to Freddie's son at the time, right? But we used all of the tools we had at our disposal. It wouldn't have been possible without the internet, right? We had access to many of the pictures at the North Holland Archive, North Holland Archives Museum website. So we had to make do with the information we had. Unfortunately, we couldn't travel. We couldn't come to Haarlem during the research process. The budget, comic book budgets in Brazil are incredibly limited. So it was a miracle that we actually got the small budget to actually produce it in the first place, let alone say travel here. So it was out of the question. So we had to make do with everything we had, right?
Yeah. We got a lot of photos, and also, for example, it's fun to think I had to paint a lot of places from Haarlem without to travel to Haarlem. So I used a lot of Google Street looking, for example, for the buildings that are exactly like they are today. But you have some funny moments. For example, there are 2 pages I have to hand draw and one hand paint because I have drawn the wrong building. Because the name is very close. For example, the Cathedral of St. Bavo. I start to draw the old one, the Bavark. I think it's Bavark. I was drawing the wrong cathedral, and I realized there's a river close. There's no river here. I was in Google Street. There's no river here. I think that's the wrong cathedral. Okay, let's start everything again. This one was in drawings, in pencils, so I didn't have to paint. But the hospital where the 3 girls met for the first time, same thing. Oh, okay, it's the wrong hospital. The page was all painted. Okay, I will start the paint from the beginning, from the scratch, from the sketches again, because it's the wrong place.
This is probably your first time in Haarlem? I'm going to assume.
It's my second.
Oh, it's your second.
It's my second because I currently live in Belgium. And last year, my wife and I came to Europe because she was being relocated at her job, and that's why we live in Belgium. And they told us to go around and visit some places in Belgium to decide where we wanted to live. But because we were there for 2 weeks, and our book had just come out, I told my wife, look, the book just came out. We need to have a sort of pilgrimage to Haarlem to pay our respects. It's a day trip. We'll go and return the same day. And that's what we did. So I got to know Haarlem, a little bit of Haarlem, back in January last year.
Right.
For me, it's my first time here, my first time in Netherlands.
And when you walk around, did you visit places that you knew from your story?
Not this week, but because I have to go to the comic shop to sign the pre-order books. I'm here, but I will stay here for 1 more week, so I will go tourism mode tomorrow, and I want to visit all the places, the Hannie statue and all the places.
Does it meet your expectations so far, or do you see things like, oh, we should have done this differently?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Do you have an example? Or?
For example, my first day was walking to the comic shop, Yoponopoyo, and I got lost. And I was walking, the cathedral, like a child in the middle. I knew I was in the wrong way because, I don't pass by this cathedral going to the shop. But amazing, I'm here. I know where it is. I will be here. Of course, I just walk around, but I want to go back to visit the cathedral if possible. But I was like, oh, that's the cathedral. Right. Finally, I'm here.
In writing this story, where did you want to put the emphasis on this story? What was the message you wanted to give to the audience?
I think that the whole point of at first when I started writing, I didn't know who the narrator would be, right? So there would be captions, and the narrator would be it would be very impersonal. But then as the story went on, I felt that it would be a disservice to the story to have an impersonal narrator. So I decided to make Hannie the narrator, and I wanted to convey some of the feelings that they were going through, especially because in the comic book medium, unfortunately, violence is many times glorified. Right, so because comic books have, especially North American comic books,
well, the superhero genre is
yes,
very good.
So there's a tendency to look at that and think, how cool! Look at those guys with muscles and guns. Look,
you solve the problems with fists.
Yeah, so we really did not want to do that. So we wanted to show that even though these girls were doing something so brave, it also took a toll on them because they questioned themselves frequently about what they were doing. They were on the right side of things, but even they had to do things which are difficult, which I don't know if I would be able to do any of the things that they did. So we wanted to get inside their minds and try to show the reader how difficult it can be, right? When you're put in a position like that, and how resolute, and even if you are resolute, there will be moments of doubt, right? So, and this is something I got from Truus's book, not then, not now, not ever, right? It's the book that she wrote with her memoirs, and it was incredible to read her stories and her point of view. So I think that's one of the things that we wanted to convey. Not only tell readers or inform readers about their story, but also remind them of the humanity between inside their actions, right behind their actions. So this was definitely one of the points we wanted to make.
It's quite distinctive, actually, because usually when people make a graphic novel, which is a biography, there is a tendency to leave out the narration or to leave out the thoughts of the inner dialogue, simply because it's easier to base yourself on facts written in books rather than imagine yourself what someone would think. You mentioned a book by Truus. Did that contain a lot of conversations? I had never read the book, but did that contain a lot of conversations with Hannie that gave you an idea of what she probably thought?
I wouldn't say many conversations. There are a few moments where she narrates her conversations with Hannie, but there are many moments where she's just describing what she saw in Hannie. And that was the starting point. So her semblance, how shy or how quiet she would go after a certain mission, after something went wrong. So this provided us with a glimpse of what her personality might have, been like. And also in interviews, there were interviews with old friends or people who had gone to school with Hannie. So we used that also to try and do justice to her. Of course, I know it's a piece of historical fiction, so there will be many things that we sort of interpret it our own way. But we did our best to try and do justice to these people.
Right. You said that you wanted to show how difficult it really is to be in the resistance. You know you're on the right side, or at least you tell yourself you're on the right side, but still it's probably a daily struggle. One of an interesting scene is, for instance, the moment when Hannie is doing her intake conversation, and you have this beautiful divided image where you see the three faces of the girls talking to each other, and then three hands underneath the table, each of them holding a pistol. So that marks really clearly, like, there is, like, you need to trust people, but when do you start trusting someone else? And until that point, you can always be there can always be treason or difficulties or whatever you. At the same time, I understand that Hannie she did the test in order to be a member of the group, and the test was I don't know if everyone knows it, but the test was she had to shoot a German soldier. And they wanted to see if she had the guts to squeeze the trigger. Mm-hmm. And she was quite angry. I read that she was quite angry about that test. That is something you did not include in the book. Why include one of these frictionless scenes and not include the other? Where did you make your choices?
I think that especially the first chapters, we didn't want to. It's not completely linear. So we go back and forth at the beginning of the book, right, with flashbacks. So we start, the story starts with Truus and Freddie at the bar, right, sort of seducing, especially Truus, right, seducing some collaborators, Nazi collaborators. So at that point, we know that she's part of the resistance already. So because we chose to tell the story of how they entered the RVV as flashbacks, we had to sort of let some elements aside and focus on other things because of these transitions, right? We didn't want it to be completely linear. We didn't want to go, okay, so the story starts when they join the RVV and they end. No, we wanted to mingle the beginning a little. We wanted to make we wanted to make the reader struggle a little at the beginning to find themselves, right? To find themselves within the timeline of events. And of course, there's a main thread in our story, which is, I mean, according to the events, according to everything we read, was not a main thread that guided every mission, right? Which is the liquidation. They called it liquidation, right? The assassination of Hake Christ, right? One of
the scenes in the book.
Yeah. So we made this thread that sort of connected all of the chapters, but that was not, reality. That mission did exist, but their missions were a little more, I would say, random, in the sense that this is the new assignment. There's no thread connecting them, right? So because it's a graphic novel, we needed at least some sort of backbone to the story. And I felt that moment, which was so pivotal to all of them, that moment could be it, right? Especially for the first half of the book.
Yeah, right. It's really, because the book is more or less attached to Hannie Schaft. It's her voice that does the voiceover. But the focus is really on all three of the girls, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so why a focus on Hannie Schaft? Why give her the voiceover specifically?
I think the first reason was that Truus had already shared her point of view with her book, so it would be absolutely redundant to do that. I mean, completely unnecessary, because we already had Truus's point of view. And second, because as a writer, it's challenging to think like somebody who's really different. So not only was she a woman, she was 21, and when I started writing the story, I was already 36. She lived in the 40s. She was living in the 30s and 40s at the time, and we are very far away, right? We're separate in time by quite a lot. So as a writer, I felt it would be really challenging and a good challenge to try and put myself in that position. So I would say this is one of the elements that drove me. But then it's more personal than anything else.
Because the voiceover of Hannie Schaft is also very explicit, I thought. Why did you make it so explicit? You said you tried to imagine like how she would be like, but the separation between good and bad is quite strong, and I would imagine that especially when you're still in that situation, like you said, you're on the right side, but do you really know it? And is everything that you do the right thing to do? So why so explicit in the voiceover, and why not more doubts, for instance?
Yeah, I think that this speaks a little of the market, more about the market than our strategy. So comic books are very niched in Brazil, right? And we were publishing the book in Portuguese, right? This is the original version, if I can call it that. It was in Portuguese. So we had to cater to some of the needs of the Brazilian market as well. And so we had to, this is something that I've done comics for the American market, for example, where everything has to be extremely explicit. The Brazilian market is finding its way. So Brazilian narratives, they either explain everything or they explain nothing. So this was, our editors actually suggested that we would try and be somewhere in the middle regarding these feelings. Precisely for that reason, thinking about the readership, our readership, right?
Right. Is that because another interesting choice that is also quite contrast rich is, of course, what we see here is that everything is done in black and white, but you include red accents. Can you tell something a bit about that choice?
Okay. At the beginning, we started to black and white. And later, Felipe suggested the reds. Think about the Schindler's List, the girl with the dress. But in our case, in our book, because the red could point some small details that were very important to the storytelling, like the lipsticks of the girls when they were going to the bars to seduce the Nazis, the Hannie's hair, the flags of the Nazi soldiers. So some small points, some small details on the art that could gave more value adding this little detail of the reds.
And there's one thing, we had to let go a little bit of historical accuracy here, because we know that Hannie Schaft's hair was more orangish than red per se, but because red was the color of so many important elements in the story, just like the lipstick and the tulips at the end that symbolize this sort of like cycle of death and rebirth, and also so we made this conscious choice, right? Oh, and the blood spilled, of course. So we made this conscious choice. It was too good an opportunity to pass. So that's, and she was known as the
girl with the red hair.
With red hair,
after all, yes.
Yeah. So because of that, we said, we have to make a choice here. Let's go. But we know that her hair wasn't exactly this color. Okay, we just want to make sure about that.
The book was published in 2024 in Brazil. Did it have an impact? Did people like it? Yeah.
Yeah, people liked it for the same reason we were driving by the story. People find, that's true, it's amazing. They were so young, especially the women, the girls. Well, there are three young girls, they were fighting during the Second World War. So people, first they get curious about what's this about? Whoa, true, really? This is a true story. So that's until now, everyone have this impact. First, curiosity. Later, wow, that's true. It's really a real story. And later, they're fascinated by the bravery and all what happening with their story.
Yeah, and in Brazil, the Ministry of Education, they have a program where they make available comic books and graphic novels, as well as novels. They make them available for free, right? So that schools can use them on the online platform. And we were lucky that Haarlem Sirens was actually picked to be in this project. So I think that it speaks a little of the importance, and it speaks of the reception that it's gotten so far, right? So we were really happy when we found out.
It's a good initiative by the Brazilian government.
Yeah, exactly.
We should suggest it here. I cannot ignore the thought that this book was written now in these days, especially because the world is sort of exploding right now. Like you yourself had Bolsonaro as a president, so you know all too well. So, am I right to assume that?
I think this was one of the driving forces, really,
right?
Because, as I said, this research came during the pandemic. So, although things were not, in terms of worldwide conflict, not as problematic as they are today, we were still living, especially in Brazil, and I can speak of the U.S. as well, this wave of denial and denying the purchase of vaccines, and this sort of like madness that you couldn't help but sort of compare like this moment where madmen are in power, right? So it was one of the, I think some of this sort of like sense of indignation was present.
Yeah, stories like these are told in the Netherlands over and over again, always with the idea that we want to warn people just to make sure it will never happen again. And yet, especially in the last few years, we see that there's a strong pull to the right, to the far right even, that this is normalized, etc. We mentioned Bolsonaro. You said yourself that it worried you.
Oh, it continues to worry us.
And yeah, because
even though I don't live in Brazil anymore, I don't know the future. I might be back to Brazil next year, in 2 years, in 3 years. I don't know. So and knowing that his son is intending to run for president is also a matter of concern for at least.
Yes, his family wants to stay in the government, even trying to force they stay.
Yeah.
So
he was arrested for attempting a coup d'état, right? They were just dumb enough to leave all the evidences, all the pieces of evidence, but this was a fact. That's why he was arrested. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen because the government, like the current Brazilian government, and we talk about this all the time, they're really bad at communication, really, really bad. So in order for any idea, any good idea or a good deed or a good program to be divulged and promoted, they don't grasp it. They're highly incompetent communicating the good points or the good advancements that they have provided. So this is something that annoys us, right? It's because it's a weakness it's a flaw that's dangerous, and it's a flaw that they've had time to learn how to operate social media, because that's something that the far right dominates, right?
It uses very effectively. Why is it, do you think, that despite all these warnings, despite all these stories, despite we have better access to our own history than ever, and yet people are drawn to the far right and are still, praising the populists? How come, do you think?
Well, first, we are humans. We all commit mistakes, and we need to remember, because we are always repeating the same mistakes. And also, today we have more efficient ways to communicate online, using social media, but also it has the other side. It can be used with, let's say, not the best intentions, and this has been used by far right very well. So we talked about this just some minutes ago, coming to here, how it's easy to spread any new you want online, and not everyone will try to check is this true?
And I think that they're drawn to this idea that complex problems can have simple solutions, because this is what these people offer. They offer simple solutions, and I'm going to quote unquote here because they have none, but they pretend to offer very simple solutions to very complex problems, right? And this draws a lot of people, right? So when you have a candidate who sits down and says, look, this is a complicated matter, we have to discuss it, most people will not have the patience, right? Most people can't have the patience because they already struggle a lot, and others will have, I'm tired of waiting. You've been telling me this for so long that I don't trust that you're going to keep discussing. So when the other side, when a far right candidate shows up and says, look, I have a solution for this, I will tell you, I will do this when I'm elected, they don't care about the question, a simple question, which is, what is your solution? And has any other country actually tried that solution and worked, right? And so you see, usually what happens in Brazil is a reflex of what's happening in the US, unfortunately, right, when it comes down to politics. So because of everything that's been going on there, it's a moment where we really don't know what's going to happen this year, how much influence the American government will exert on the election, because there will be interference.
I just mentioned the dictatorship in Brazil. Mm-hmm. That went on for about 20 years.
21 years.
21 years even, yeah. Does that still resonate? Because when you look at Spain, for instance, that has been even longer ago, and that still has, you still see a lot of groups who sympathize with Franco. So does that still play a part in Brazil as well?
Yes, it's very strong yet. And for example, Bolsonaro was part of the dictatorship. Also, some of his ministers from the military side. And it's, as I said, they know how to use the social media, and you can see even young people praising the dictatorship without knowing what. It's like, whoa, these people knows what they're talking about when they're saying it's a good thing, because there is a wrong idea, for example, from my grandparents, that at the time of the dictatorship, things were easier. It was more secure, things were easier, because they don't know, media, at the time it wasn't nothing like we have today. So they know what was wrote in the newspaper. There was no internet, for example.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to convince them that there's a very strong paradox in what they believe, because the same people shouting for the return of a dictatorship are the people who will yell at you that freedom of speech is the most important thing, and it's a sacred right, and it cannot be,
quite ironic.
It is very ironic. So, and when you bring this up, they seem to be incapable of comprehending that this is the two things cannot exist. Right, so when you're talking to them, when you're trying to have an argument with people about this issue, for example, that's what makes it difficult and frustrating, and that's why so many people have given up talking to people who are more on the far right side, I would say, because it's very hard to get any message across when you have no clear line of thinking, no clear reasoning. So how can you believe two conflicting ideas at the same time? How can you talk to a person about that subject when they believe in two things that cannot coexist?
I'm not even sure that they do not see the irony of it, but I guess they don't care at all. I assume that you took this book on a tour, that you perhaps when you went to schools, or did you do talks, or I'm asking this because I wonder if you see people change, if you feel like you're making a difference by presenting this book, if you see minds get tilted, if you see opinions switch.
Oh yes, I think is some people. Well, they are impressed by their courage. They think about how so young people can do that, and I saw some asking, "Whoa, what we can do about things?" Because you never thought about to go to the streets with guns. Of course, they don't think about killing people now, but they think, "Wow, these girls so many time ago did this." We do nothing. We keep complaining about politics, but we do nothing. I have received messages like this a lot. Well, we never think. We just here sitting and doing nothing, just complaining about the government, about the politics, about what people are doing in other countries, in the United States, but we doing nothing. Oh, okay, we always can do something. Don't matter how small we think you are. This is something that is really emotional when I get one message like this.
So people were getting activated. So to
think what I can do.
At least, yeah. Yeah. So you do feel that the book brings a spark of hope in these times.
This was our intention, even though we wrote the book actually.
We hope.
Yeah. And one thing we were discussing, right? This book was written before October 23rd. Right. So right now, what we see that what the government of Israel is doing, especially to not only Gaza but Lebanon,
it just continues.
It just continues. So we see that it's what do we do with that? So we released the book a little before that, and now we have this massive world problem for which there's no simple solution, if there is any solution at this point, right? This has escalated, not to mention, and of course I'm bringing the war in Iran as well. So it's at times we feel like, what are we doing? Like what exactly are we doing? And when the book came out,
keep doing it.
Yeah. So it's this is the thing. So, but then I look back at some of the other comic book artists who created pieces which were so majestic and timeless. Like, of course, we're talking about Mouse, right, by Art Spiegelman. We have Persepolis, and I'm just listing some of them which talk about the current scenario. Because if you get Mouse, Persepolis, and you get Joe Sacco's work about Palestine, I think that you have this sort of like a sacred trilogy to understand what's happening right now. So I think that comic books, the graphic novel comic book medium can be this tool to help people understand better what they're currently seeing. Maybe it will happen in a few years, in 10 years, in 20 years. Maybe somebody will read their story and go like, this is very similar to what happened, a while ago, or this is very similar to what's happening now. So maybe we can't predict that, but maybe that's something that could happen, right?
Yeah, we are too small to make something big, but I think if it's one reader came to us to say, "Oh, I start to think what I can do," oh, okay, it's nice. I did a small difference, but I did.
Yeah, it would be worth it. Yeah. Does anyone in the audience have a question? Does anyone stairs, long stairs?
It's a little bit of a different one, but I noticed that the cover.
Wait, I'll give you the mic, Kim.
Sorry about that. Hello. I just noticed that the cover looks like the Night Watch. And what's the reasoning behind that?
Okay, so there's a very good story behind it, because what happened there was that we wanted to make a cover that would instantly to Brazilians, because we were thinking about the Brazilian audience, we needed a cover that would sort of like speak of the Netherlands by itself. Especially because most Brazilians won't know the city of Haarlem, right? If you say Haarlem to most Brazilians, they will probably think of the neighborhood in New York called Haarlem, right? Because it's been out in video games and movies and all that, and so we needed them to connect the title to the Netherlands. So we thought, okay, what can we do? We wanted to make something a little more special, a little more artistic, and we wanted to take advantage of Giovanna's wonderful watercolor work, right?
Yes, and also Rembrandt is very known in Brazil. And
Rembrandt. Oh, right. Yeah.
It's very known in the Night Watch. And we think an image that communicate very quickly with the audience. They will look and think about Netherlands. So we decided to make a version of the Night Watch with the girls in the Nazi instead. But as soon as the project was sold to publisher, Eric contacted us, and he said, this cover is not exactly Haarlem. Can you do a special version for Haarlem? So with landmarks or something that reminds us of very specific from Haarlem. Well, yes, of course. So we discussed. The first ideas were to take some artists, local artists from Haarlem.
Yeah.
But he said, no, it was good if we could have the landmarks like the Dome of the Prison.
We thought about, okay, so should we get Frans Hal's painting and then adapt and then reimagine it as we did Rembrandt's? And I said, no. Let's do something different. And the reason behind the Night Watch, right, apart from being one of the most famous paintings by Dutch painters, I think it represented something, which is a concept that comic book readers have read constantly, which is who watches the Watchmen, right? So people in the readers of comic books who have read Watchmen, well, this quote was not made by Alan Moore in Watchmen. This is an older quote, but still it resonates. So we wanted to play around with that. Who were the Watchmen at that time, right? In Haarlem or in the Netherlands, and so we have the Watchmen who were the Nazi collaborators, but then those girls stepped in and they became the watchers of that region, or along with the other members of the RVV. So there was a lot to unpack in that cover. Most readers, it will go by unnoticed to most readers. So we thought we need them to relate the cover to the Netherlands. So that was the simplest, to distill it in its simplest form. That's what we wanted. But behind it, there was a whole thinking about why the painting could work on a symbolic level as well. Oh, and by the way, it was funny because Eric mentioned that, we should have a Haarlem cover. We were like, okay, let's do this. And then Giovanna started working on it. But then Eric, I think, published on Facebook like a tease with the old cover. And it was incredible because like the very first comment was like, how dare you make a cover of a book about Haarlem with a painting from Amsterdam? And we were like, okay, so Eric,
really,
let's move a little faster and get the cover done.
The next one.
Yes, because I can't explain all this reasoning to every single person. So let's just let's just move a little faster and get the cover done.
From what I understand, that the second cover, the one that features Haarlem, is the one of the special edition.
Yes, the special edition for Haarlem.
Yeah,
but you can but you can still see the cover, the Night Watch cover, if you open it.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So if you remove the dust jacket,
if you remove the dust jacket, you can see the original cover.
The inside is the Brazilian cover. And in other places than Haarlem, we build the same cover without the dust jacket. Okay. So it's really a Haarlem special dish.
And you can see actually...
Yeah, right.
And you can actually see the original art. Do you want to talk about
there's an exhibition at the North Holland Archive where the originals are in there, including the big painting for the cover.
And the prison building is on there, where we are now.
Yeah.
Thank you for the book. Anyone else with a question from the audience? Is that a raised hand or just wiping away some... You have a question. Okay, wait.
Yes. First of all, congratulations. Okay. Yes. If understood correctly, this is the first work you did together, right? And the result of this work of yourselves is speak by itself, right? It's a nice, very, very good result, a very good graphic novel. Now, do you have plans for any future work together?
Yes,
given the success.
we have
We've been
plans.
speaking, and then we're trying to arrange things. So yeah, it will probably take a little while, but yeah.
Yes, this kind of work it takes a lot of time. And for example, I took 2 years painting. It's more than 100 pages in watercolor. Mm-hmm. So usually it takes a lot of time, but we have a plan. And as soon as I'll be back to Brazil, we will start to sketch. Say a little more.
No, what I can say is that it has nothing to do with in terms of genre or end style. It has nothing to do with our work in Haarlem Sirens. So it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you said something about the hair color of Hannie, and that it was not actually the right color, but the rest of the book is black and white, and which is also not original color. So, so I wouldn't bother about that.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
I think we're nearing the end. If anyone has another question, perhaps we could do one more. No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
So now go out and buy the book.